now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Mike Guerin from Team Kane Solutions, Inc., and I will be your host, tour guide, and MC for the session this afternoon on Manage It. So, going here, Management is a suite of data management tools for JD Edwards Enterprise 1 9X level. We'll step through what we're about to cover off. So, before we do, here's your banditos for today. To mention, my name is Mike Guerin. I'm currently Senior Advisor here at Team Kane Solutions, Inc. I've been in the JD Edwards space for over 35 years. This past May actually represented 37 years since I first touched JD Edwards as a customer. And I've been with Team Kane hanging around for about 18 years. So I'm legally able to vote and drink with Team Kane now. Russ, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm the youngster. I don't think I'm legal yet, Mike. I have nowhere near as many years as JD Edwards experience as you, but strangely enough, I've been working with JD Edwards since the last century, and the last 11 years with Click. As most of you know me from the purchase side of things, and obviously we've got our new product, Manage It, out now as well.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And yeah, Russ and I have had the pleasure of working for quite a while together. A little bit of housekeeping. We've got everybody in listen-only mode as we do when we do our webinars. There is in the GoToWebinar chat box, there's a spot to be able to submit questions. So do submit them as you think of them as we go along. We will stop a couple of times during the course of it and answer the questions. We should be right on about 60 minutes on this one. We are recording the session, so if there's somebody else that you know of in or outside your organization that wanted to see this but couldn't attend, great, or if you just wanted to go back and view the recording at your leisure, that's great. If you've been on any webinars with us, you know we ask a few questions at the end. So if you want to help us out with the exit survey that will pop up when you exit, that would be wonderful. So we're hoping to present some interesting information to you today. And just speaking of interesting information, did you know that if you removed all of the empty space in the atoms in our bodies, and you did that for the entire human race, so over 7 billion people, the atoms that would be left over after the empty space is gone would all fit in a sugar cube. Wow. So just an interesting random fact for you to keep in mind and maybe win some bar bets with. So a little bit of entertainment for you. What we're going to be showing today is a combination of analytics, which is the Manage It solution. We'll also be showing you the Test It solution, and we will be showing you the Data Mask solution. So before we get into this, just gonna maybe pop up a quick poll question, and this is with regards to your data analytics right now. So the question is, do you have a tool now that allows you to visualize your data and its growth by modules? So for example, by financials, by general ledger, accounts payable, purchasing, etc. So I'm just going to launch this. We'll keep it open for less than a minute. Just let people vote on this and see what we come back with. This is always Russ, it's always interesting when we do this and see what we get back from people. So get a chance to get the votes in here. We should be interesting, Russ, to see if there's any correlation between size of organization as well. Typically, the larger the organization, the more it tends to be. But so, okay, we'll keep it open for another 10 or 15 seconds. Okay, so a little over half say that they do not. So we normally see a little bit more than that would come up, but cool, okay. Oh, people were saying that some people didn't see the poll. So, okay, we'll have to check on that for the next time around. But okay, thanks anyway, people. So, don't mind the little pop-up there. So from the analytics side, I just need to get over here and shrink something down. Okay, so from an analytics side, JD Edwards, you're quite used to, I'm sure, the different environments that you've got. So if you've got a development environment, for example, you've got your control tables and you've got your business data. You also likely have a PY, prototype environment, with your control tables and business data. You might have a training one as well. Then separate from that, you've got your production with your control tables and your business data. If you're using Purgit, you are moving data out from your production, shrinking the tables down, and that's typically for your business data, moving it off into your archive environment. And then that's also shrinking down the data that you have as you're replicating your other environments. So copying that down to training and to prototype and to development. When you're looking at this, though, and you're doing the analysis, you're going to be looking and saying, well, what's the overall size of it? You can get to that information with some tools. What about the individual size for each of the individual environments? What about the table sizes for each of the individual tables? How big is my 43119 now? How about my chart of accounts? How about my item master? What about my payroll tables? The record counts. What's the growth look like? I know that I brought on another business unit, and I know that I've reorganized my chart of accounts. What's the growth curve for that look like, and what's it going to mean in the future? So am I able to forecast out from where I am now for my growth? Am I monitoring things? Am I able to? Am I able to get alerted to it? What's my overall plan for managing the data, the growth, what I've got in the environments? Am I going to purge an archive? When should I purge an archive? What should I focus on? There's a lot to look at. Typically, what we've seen with clients is there are pieces of that you can use in the database administration. There might be some reports that you can run. You might have a CNC person going in and doing some scripts at certain times, but it's difficult to have or to find a tool that will give you the type of visibility that you want to be able to have across all of those options. When we're looking at the Manage It solution, and we'll see this when we're on the screen, we're starting off on the left-hand side with alerts. So rather than making you pour through things, we give you the opportunity to say, what of my tables are getting over a certain size, either in terms of size or records, what in terms of my database data sources are getting over a certain size, do I have any table spec errors? That's going to be presented to me in a summary, and I can look at database or data source, and I can look at it by size or by number of records. Below that, I'll have my growth and my forecast. And on the right-hand side, I'll have my tables and context-sensitive information. So this allows us to go in from an environment side and see the information that's there, see what's being alerted to me, and look at the details for it. I can also be looking at it from a functional side, and the functional side will be by environment. So I want to look at prototype versus production, or I want to look at my dev. Within that, I want to look at the information by modules. So classical terms in JD Edwards, that's financials, logistics, payroll, HR, cross module tools, that sort of thing. Within that, I'll be wanting to look at my sub-modules. So under financials, I will be able to go in and inspect the information for GL, AR, AP, fixed assets. For logistics, that's likely going to be purchasing, sales, inventory, advanced pricing, transportation, manufacturing equivalent modules as well. For those, I'll be able to see the tables and see which ones I need to be interested in. And I'll be able to look at my growth and my forecast. So I'm stepping down from my environments into my modules, from there into my sub-modules, from there being able to go and look at my tables, and from there being able to go in and look at my growth and forecast for them. Bring me a little slurp of coffee to keep me going here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over and actually get into the live system. So I'm just going to switch over here. Russ, while I'm getting myself set up here, are there any questions that might have come in the meantime?
Just one at the moment. Sorry about that. I think I need some coffee as well there. What release of JD Edwards is Manage It available from? And I can take that one.
Okay.
Manage It's on the 9s. So because we develop a lot of the functionality in dashboards, dashboards are only available from tools 8.98 and above, and by default, or the lowest level release, that's from apps 9.0, 9.1, and then 9.2. So it's Manage It's available on the 9s. If you are actually on tools 8.98 but on an older JD Edwards release and you really want to manage it, then let us know. There might be a bit of CNC jiggery pokery that we can do to make it work.
Awesome. Love jiggery pokery.
Yeah.
There's an actual course in that, I understand, so for CNC.
I've got a degree in it.
Excellent. Cool. Okay. Is that it, Russ, or more questions? Or
No, that's it for now.
Okay, awesome. So I'm actually in Manage It. Manage It is run in addition to Manage It and Test It. So let me just go back here. So when you come in, it's a single program that you get into. And when you get into it, you can access Manage It, and you can access Test It, and Test It includes Data Mask, both from the same screen. So you start off with, like Russell mentioned, some dashboards. Usual, green is good, red is bad. So we can see that for my database data sources here, I'm all green, I'm all good. And individual table alerts, I'm all green, I'm all good. My definition runs for Test It, all green. And my last definition run was all good as well. So I'm going to go straight into Manage It to start off with. And when I get in here, I'm going to step through predominantly here, which is my environment dashboard. And I'm going to take a look at my functional dashboard. We also have on the right my setup. So the setup I would normally be doing is my data sources, setting up the cross-reference between my environment and the database data sources that tie to it. Maintaining my table record lengths if I want to tweak that for my own individual setup, which builds into the calculations for the sizes that I'm looking at. You absolutely want to be able to manage the colors, as we'll be able to see. So if you want to display your production in the Martha Stewart Fall Fuchsia, then you can do so. You can also set up your alerts. And the last item here is the actual program that runs and builds up the statistics. So the program that runs, that is building the information that we'll see on the screens, is typically something that you'd set up and run as a sleeper job, and run that either daily or weekly, or whatever makes sense for yourself. So I'm going to go into the environment dashboard here. We mentioned on the screen that there's several portions to the screen. So here on the left-hand side, we've got our alerts. So I've got my alerts for the database data source. I've got my alerts for my individual tables. And I've got my alerts for comparison of tables to specs. Comparison of tables to specs could be if, for example, I have 17 indexes that have been assigned to a table, but I only have 16 in the table itself. This will show to me. So when I'm looking at the information as well, so that's on the left-hand side, I will step through some of the radio buttons and we can see the information that it will display on the right-hand side. But for by environment or by database data source in the middle panel here, I can look at, I've got my environment. So here I've got my development, yellow. I've got my production in purple, and I've got my prototype in green. For those, I can look at either the database size, or I can look at the number of records. Down below, based upon what I've selected here, it is going to show me my trends. So I can see my DV. You can follow the curve there. That's the growth over the last 10 years. I can change the time frame as well and see it 5 years, 2 years. There's quite a jump there, so probably somewhere in there for the overall database. I might have added another company. I might have started a payroll processing, something that would have impacted it. Interestingly enough, that's my development that's going up a lot, but not my prototype. So I probably want to take a look at what's taking up so much room in my development. And I'm doing this all on a dashboard. On the right-hand side, I can see a number of tabs, and this will change based upon what I'm looking at. I've got my table analysis by environment, which is what I'm looking at right now. So I can see this is my business data test, and I can see in there my tables. I can see the number of records. I can see the percentage those records represent overall. I can see my size, and I can see what percentage that represents overall. So I can see in here right away looking at it that my media objects, I've got 375 million records representing 5% of the total records, but it's representing 51% of my actual data. So if I change this to look at it by the number of records, the information changes as well. So I'm going to go in and say, let's look at my development. And I can see this has changed now. Before, I had a different table up at the top. Oops. Randomly drawing there. There I go again. All righty. So I can see now I'm looking at the number of records, and I'm looking at the percentage as well. So what's nice about this is I'm coming in by environment, and it's showing me by environment the information by table. It's showing me the growth rate, and it's showing me the growth rate by table as I select individual tables down here. It can also show me my database growth forecast, so that's the last 12 months. That's the last 2 years. That's the last 5 years. Depending upon how often I've been doing this, I could get down to the last 2 weeks, 3 months, or 12 months. Tables that I've been alerted to. So I'm going to, over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to say I've got an alert for my account ledger. So I'm going to click on that. When I come over here, there's an orange line, a little dotted line we can see right here. That is my alert that I've set. And I've got an alert set here for, looks like 50 million records. And I can see I'm past that. I'm way over here. My size is just under 66,000 megabytes or 66 gig. And I've got 87 million records in it. And I can see that this is for the FO911. So if I'm looking at this from the perspective of what do I need to manage, this is very helpful. The alerts gives me the ability to say there's some certain tables that I want to be able to monitor and see what's going on and be proactively notified if they get to a certain size. And you can do this not only for the table, but the table within the database data source. So if you're setting up a prototype environment, if you're setting something up, heading into an upgrade, you can have different alerts for that versus your production. You might say, my production I know is going to be big, but hey, my prototype, my training should not be that big for these ones. The whole idea is to make it smaller. I want to be notified of it. The notification part of it is in this alerts. My alerts let me set up. I can see the first ones here. I've got they're set up for the database data source level. That is by size. So I said for my CRP, for my test, and for my production, I've got different levels of sizes that I want to check. For the others, this is at the table level. We can see that with the T there. When I'm at the table level, I can set up for a combination of the records and or the size. So I can see my PO detail. I've got a number of records, and I've also got a table size. But others, for example, my AP ledger, or for my address book, I'm selecting either size or records. So you can do any combination of those. This is letting me know what I need to be concerned about based upon what I've told it. And in the analysis, letting me go in and quickly see by records or by size what's taking up the space. So this is all right within the dashboard. I'm going to back out of here now, and I'm going to go into the second level of that, which is my functional dashboard. The difference between the two, the environment is looking at it from the perspective of production versus prototype versus maybe my archive versus my training versus my dev. When I'm looking at it from the functional side, I'm going in that manner here on the left-hand side as well. I've got my dev, I've got my production, I've got my prototype, but then I'm coming in and I'm looking at it by module. So financials, workforce, logistic, project management, multi-module, enterprise one tools. And below that, based upon what I've selected for my module, it's going to give me my sub-module. I've got my graphical information here in the center, so I can see the same with percentages, but in a pie chart format. On the right-hand side, I've got my analysis as well that I'm looking at. One thing I've got here that I also had in my environment that I didn't touch on is my dates. So I can scroll backwards and forwards in my dates, and the information will change to represent that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to say, geez, my logistics, 195 million records. Let's take a look at that. So when I select that, the bottom of the screen now updates and shows me my breakdown by submodule. And I can see in there, I've got a fair amount in my material planning. Just going to zoom in a little bit here. So I've got a fair amount in material planning and also inventory. That's my two big ones, and sales order management. Not a lot in EDI. There's my graphical breakdown. I'm going to take a look at my inventory management. And when I come back up here, I'm just going to come up and go over to the side so we can see our business data. So in here, I can see now from a size perspective, 40% of that is in my sales order detail ledger, about what I would expect. About 31% is in my sales order detail itself, about as I would expect. I've got a tag file, though, that's taking up a fair amount of space. I don't know if I was quite expecting that. And if I come down in here, I've got a fair number of records in some of my others, including my Z tables, which probably shouldn't be quite that big, might just be points in time. Well, let's then go down and take a look and say, well, what about if I was looking at inventory? And I come back over here and look. And by 4111, I would expect by 4102, by 4101, my item master, I've got almost 7 million records in it. Maybe I need to be looking at, I know I don't have that many SKUs. Maybe we still have in there some from a conversion from a prior system or line of business that we dropped off that we need to take a look at. Well, that's by size. Let's take a look at it by number of records. Yeah, about what I expect. My item cost file is awfully big. My item branch file, nearly 10 million records. So what I'm doing here, I'm using the functional side. Take a look. I probably wouldn't be doing this every day, but periodically, and certainly if I'm rebuilding environments, using this to take a look and see what have I got, what's taking up my space, what are my large number of records, and figuring out if there's some proactive work that I need to be able to do on this. You notice down here as well, when I selected inventory and then selected the individual table, down here, because I was looking at the 4111 above, this is showing me my 4111, and it's showing me my growth forecast. If I see a big hockey stick curve coming up here, there's an awful lot of growth going on. It's something I want to look at. When I've worked with customers, when I'm looking at manage it and thinking of it in comparison to test it, manage it is the starting point for me for knowing what I've got in the tables, knowing what I've got in my production, knowing what I want to end up with in my test or alternate environments. That will be the next step. That will be going in and saying, right now I want to use test it to create my test environments. So Russ, I'm going to switch over now to back to the presentation and start to step through the test it. Are there some questions in the meantime? And we have each other's back all the time. Are there things that would make sense to point out to people that I did not touch on?
Good call, Mike. In terms of questions, there's one extra questions come in, and guys, feel free to send any more questions through on the question box as well. So one question that's come in: can we see the historical growth from the dawn of time? So at the moment, the way that the statistics are gathered are point in time. So when the batch job runs to gather the statistics, it says this is what it is now. But in a future release, we've got it on our development schedule already, we're going to provide the ability to actually inquire into the tables on the primary date column, for example, GL date in FO911, to then see back to the year dot what is the growth of that particular table over time. So it's not in there at the moment, but it is coming with the Oracle Safe Harbor statement in there as well. But no, it's on the development list, so it will be coming.
Awesome. Okay. That all it is for questions right now?
Yep, that's all it is for questions. And no, you did a wonderful job on the dashboards, Mike. Even better than I would do.
Oh, yeah, right. That'll be the day. Oh, but thank you. I appreciate that. All righty. Onwards and upwards to test it. So test it is the second of the three components within the managed solution at present. And at present, Safe Harbor can absolutely see with input from customers that this is going to, I know the express intent is to grow this with input from customers. So
yep.
I'm looking forward to the fourth and fifth modules. But anyway, lots of good stuff for now. So test it. So quick poll question. I'll see if I can actually get this to work this time. And that is simply, are you able to at present easily recreate a test environment? So we'll launch that. Hopefully that's actually, oh yeah, we're getting, yeah. The folks that weren't able to last time, let me know. And the illustrious Andrew is indicating that yes, it is working. So thank you, sir. And okay, just give it another, almost there. Just give it another little bit. Okay, so that's at our 40 seconds. So we'll close the poll. And thanks, everybody. Not hugely surprising. I think we've had this a couple of times before, Russ. 100% say that they are able to, actually that it's the reverse. 100% say yes that or no that they are not able to. I keep getting this. It's like the bread side down, right? So about as expected. 100% say no, they have troubles with it. So thanks. So here's what happens. So we're looking at the development, prototype, training, and production. Over time, your business data grows. So the normal inclination then is, okay, we want to train people on the new capabilities. We put out OVR, we got Cafe One going, we want to show them watch lists, so we're going to train them, so we're going to recreate the training environment. And then we're going to say, right, we got to do some new features, so we're going to recreate prototype. And then, oh yeah, the developers should be working with fresh data, so we are going to do the same thing for development. Well, now all of a sudden, the growth that we've got in PD, we've done that 3 times. And we're backing up, including these environments. So, and we've got high availability nodes that need to be replicated. And we've got online disaster recovery replication. Oh, and there's CNC DBA time that's involved for that. And it takes them time to be able to do it, and skills for the CNC DBA. We don't do it that often, so we've got to work on scheduling and appropriate timing for when people are off the system and all. Because we're blowing stuff away, whatever's out there in PY or DV, if people have been working on stuff, odds are that's gone. The general approach is one size fits all when you're replicating the environments, and that's really not the case. The good news is you're getting the whole database and you're getting all of the tables. So therefore you're going to have full data integrity, but the cost is everything that we mentioned prior to that. So the approach that we are taking with tested is we're starting out with at the table side. So typically there's a subset of information that you want to refresh that's going to be coming from the tables. And then we're looking at within the tables, we want to be able to do some data selection. There's data integrity within JD Edwards. So if you're looking at purchasing or sales header to detail and the related information, we want to be able to provide actions that you can do. So be able to clear the tables, to be able to replace the information. If we're replacing it, that's typically going to be on a join. Or do we want to add? And if we're adding, do we want to add from a join as well? Second concept in play here is table groups. Table groups are typically tables that need to get refreshed together. So they will pull in a number of different tables. One great way to think of this is something like on the procurement side or on the sales side or on the inventory side or the general accounting side. If you're going to be refreshing the data, your table groups for GL will likely include your 901, your 902, your 911, 911R, fiscal date patterns, etc. Your tables could be in multiple table groups as well. We'll see this when we step through the slide, giving some examples of what it could be. You also, from a tested side, have what we call definitions. The definitions for the test runs that you're doing, the scenarios, specify where's the data coming from. Most of the time that's production, probably business data, but could be control. Where's it going to? What table group choices do you want to make? And do you want to just work with the tables that are listed there? And or what do you want to do with all of the other tables? You can also do definition level data selection. So we mentioned it when we're looking at tables, but you can also do it at the higher level. So for the overall definition. The way to think of this is if you're truly looking at wanting to reduce the size of your prototype database, then you're probably going to look at it and say, I've got 12 years of data. Oh, wait, I'm going to get it down to 7 because I'm running purge it. I'll get it down there. But I really only need a couple. My high-level, definition-level data selection could be, I'm going to look at my transaction date and my GL date, and I'm going to be saying I only want to pull in current year and last year. That can apply to all of the tables that you select. And then if you want to do differently at the table level, you can do a different data selection. So it lets you have a high level definition and then run differently below that. So you can therefore specify which tables you want that definition to apply to. The definitions level is the level at which we run. So When we're doing a tested run, we're looking at a definition. The definition will call upon the table groups. So a definition could call multiple table groups, typically will, and that will call multiple tables and their specifications. And you can have multiple definitions. So again, the different definitions can have different table groups calling different tables. The point with this is not to make this confusing, but to make sure that you understand the flexibility that's there. And then the runs are calling the definitions. So we think in terms of tables and what we might want to grab. So let's start off on the purchasing side. The F4301, my PO header, my F4311, PO detail, and I've got my related transactional tables. I might be wanting to say, I want to look where the transaction date is greater than or equal to January this year. I only want this year's data. For the 4311 then, rather than doing selection on that, I just want to go back and say, hey, based upon my join to the 4301. Same thing for my 121, same thing for my 199, and my other tables. My table groups then, I could have one for purchasing and one for sales. I might want to bring more details across for my purchasing, maybe a little bit less for sales, and I might want to link and only bring across my purchase orders that are related to sales orders in my joins. Dave could be setting up some tables to do some testing for fixed assets. I've got my FASB testing I need to do, so I want to be able to do some tweaking in that in a specialized PY environment. So he needs data for his fixed assets testing. He sure as hell doesn't need all the purchasing and sales data. So he can be a little bit more fine-tuned. He might be using the same tables, but his definitions for them could be different. Barb separately is doing some changes on advanced pricing and needs to test out. So Barb is going to set up her table groups to reflect what she needs to be applied. We also have a BI project that we're starting up, and there's a main upgrade that we're going to be working with. So we'll have table groups or make use of table groups and specifications for those. And we could have a help desk ticket that we want to create and update an environment for. So if we can do this quickly and easily, know the tables we're working with, great. Definitions, I could have one for procurement. I could have definitions for distribution, another one for manufacturing for financials, another one for all projects. And my runs, I could have a number of different ones. So key concept here when starting off tables, putting them into table groups, linking those to definitions, and then I'm doing my runs from those. So I'm going to switch over here, Russ, and do a step into test it. So usual thing, any questions so far that we can be answering for folks?
Yep, sure, just one at the moment. Which environment would you run test it in? So the concept of test it is that it's refreshing data from production, normally from production, as Mike says, to a test environment. You'd actually run the job in the non-prod environment. So you wouldn't run it in production. You'd run it in a non-prod environment, and the non-prod environment can access production's data and bring it back down to any other environment. So you could actually run it in PY and refresh from prod to dev. And that's that one. I think there's another one. Hang on a sec. I've just got to pop the window out. What do you recommend for testing these runs so we don't overwrite data in lower environments as we fine tune them? Testing these runs so we don't overwrite data in lower environments.
I think I get what they're saying. So if you already have a PY environment and you're setting this up and you want to start things up, my suggestion for what it would be worth is set up a separate environment to do this into. Odds are you're going to be setting something up that's different from what you've been doing so far. So if you're setting it up, if part of the idea, rightly so, is, hey, I should be able to get it smaller, better, quicker, less information, then prove that out with a smaller environment. Once you're comfortable with it, that it's working, then you can go back and say, right, what does this mean? My PY, what am I actually using it for? And set your routines, your table groups, and your runs and definitions to support what you want to do. But my gut, Russ, and this is just me thinking, is I would expect customers, once they have got manage it in place, because you can script in essence with the setup, the creation of the alternate environments, and you can tune the size so that it's a lot smaller. Perhaps you end up with more environments that are a little more purpose-built for what you're needing to do. So,
yeah, no, that's a good call, because then you can create that test environment with your test definitions and table groups and everything, and then you can sign into that test environment, make sure it hangs together, and then prove the point out. So yeah, that's good question, good answer.
Thanks.
Just a quick time check before we get into the
18 minutes left, right?
Yep.
So, okay, yep. Thank you, Russ. So, on the tested side, I've gone into the tested option from the previous menu, and it's pretty straightforward here. I'm really going to be looking at the tested definition setup and the runs, and then we'll step into the data mask setup and runs. I also have the ability here, my configuration, I've got my data source registration and my central object mapping. More than anything, that is there to make sure that you don't clobber production as much as anything. So you will only be allowed to work with, for your copying, the ones that you set up in your data source, and you specifically don't set up production. And your central object mapping is pretty much the same thing. For my execution, I've got my tested data copy run and my tested data mask run. So let's get into the definition setup here. Now, when we come in here, we're going to see the screen. Just going to zoom back out a little bit here. Come on. So, and highlight that there's two real components here. On my right-hand side, I've got my definition maintenance, or my left-hand side, my other right. Oh, geez. And on my other right-hand side, I've got my tested table groups. So I'm going to start off with the tested table groups and then move to the definition maintenance. So I'm going to zoom in here. Woo-hoo, big time. Oh, yeah, my mouse is a little zoom happy today. So I can see here my table groups. I've got a number of them that are set up. I do want to point out as well that the product as shipped comes with, you can see down here, there's a bunch of ZJDEs. So there are a bunch of table groups that we provide you with. So you're not starting off totally blind. For the table groups, I can add, I can delete, and I can copy. You can also go into the actual maintenance of the table group and look at the tables. Looking at the tables is really what I want to be able to do. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to call up a kind of classic one, which is my purchasing with joins, and I'm going to look at my tables. So when I'm in here, we can see, for example, my first table is my 4301. So that's my primary one. I'm specifying for that I'm going to copy and replace the records. I do have selections set up for that, and I will take a look at that. And then the other tables that I've got, you notice that they're saying join replace. So my order address, my price ledger, my receipts, my detail tag file, and they're all to the 4301. And for those, I therefore have my join criteria specified. So if I come in to my 4301, I can look and see it's got selection. So what's my selection criteria? When I come in here, this is the example when we want to do this at the table level. So we can say where the transaction date is greater than and it'll prompt me for one of the fields that are in here. And then, because this is a date, greater than, and I've got my calendar visual assist if I want. If I needed to do more criteria, if I wanted it up on the transaction date, but also the GL date, or maybe the company or the business unit or branch plan, I could also do that. So if you think in terms of normal data selection that you'd have on a table, that's what's available to you. Then let's take a look at my purchase order detail file, and I'm going to look at my join table criteria. And this is, as you would expect, I'm joining from my document type, my document company, or document type, number, and company, to document type, number, and company, from 4311 joined up to the 4301. When I come in here, initially, I can also specify load index. It'll show me what indexes there are. Let me choose which one, and then I can fill in the blanks. So if you're used to working with, if you're familiar with JD Edwards at all, you know what these fields are, and you know when you're linking from header to detail what you're looking for. Same thing for the others. So I've set these up, copy, replace, and then join, replace. I got my criteria specified. So what are my table actions? Well, I'm going to come in here to the Visual Assist and take a look. And I can see, for example, that my choices here are to clear. So I just want to clear the target. I want to copy and add. I want to copy and replace. I want to join and add. I want to join and replace, or I might want to do no action. We get asked a fair bit, why would you have a no action? Well, I might want to be specific about the fact that I recognize that I need to work with this table, but I don't want anything done at all. So it could be my UDCs. It could be my fiscal date patterns where I don't want them clobbered. I'm going to say, I'm recognizing it. It's within my group. Take no action whatsoever. So that's my tables within my table group. So I can set up the other ones that as many as I would like. And here on my listing, I can see, so I've got Mike's demo. I've also got a data mask applied to it. I've only got one table group, but 34 tables. And I've got 5 definitions that I've set up. This one, my second demo one, I've got 3 table groups, 23 tables, only 1 definition selection that has been set up in it. And I can see on the right-hand side the runs that have been done. So that's the tables. So let's zoom out. Sorry, whoops, a little too far. So that's the table on the right-hand side that we were working with. They're now being applied to what I was just looking at, which is my definitions. For my definitions, the normal functions on the left-hand side, I can add, delete, or copy. For the definitions, I can go in and see the table groups that have been tied to it. I can maintain the data selection for the definition. I can maintain the individual tables, and I can look at the definition runs. So let's come in here and look at the JD financials and see I've got AP, AR, and GL. So these are the 3 table groups that I've set up. There's the tables that are in each of them. I can go and directly maintain the tables while I'm here. Keeping in mind that in the tables, for the table groups, I've got some data selection that I might have done. I could also, while I'm in here, come back to that, and I can see the actual data selection that I might have here. So this is the higher level. What's interesting, let's try and zoom in a bit here. You can see I've got 3 different ones. The selection column, if you're familiar with the way that JD Edwards typically does creation of table names or field names, there's the 2-digit prefix and then there's the actual column name. So DGJ is going to be used a lot, DICJ and FI for fiscal year. I'm doing this selection in this definition, and I'm also making use of some special rolling offsets that we have provided. So I can say the start of last fiscal year, or the end of last year, or 30 days ago, or 1 year ago, and it tells me at this point in time, what does that evaluate to? And I can also set up my own, which is what I've done here. Current plus 2 years will take me back to end of December 2016. So if I want from January 1st, 2017 on, I could select that and say greater than that value. And I can also say I'm looking specifically for fiscal year 17. So for this entire run, this is specifying this should apply. I can then also, for that, zoom back out a bit, and see the tables that have been affected, that could be affected by that. Because it knows the column, it knows the table groups, and therefore the tables I've got, it's telling me for those selections, DICG, DGJ, or FY, here's the tables that make use of them, and here's whether right now you are using that selection. This is telling me what it's got now, and if I run this before, it'll also tell me what was coming from it. If I want to change my mind on it and say, my invoice revisions doesn't, but I want to, I just click to toggle it, or I can click to toggle it back. So it's pretty straightforward to come in here and specify which tables we want to use for the definition. So with that, I've got all of this set up. If I go in and select this specific one, down at the bottom now, I can actually see that this has been run, and this is the information for it. So completed on January 4th, definition run 17. Here's the selection that was used for it. Here's the tables and table groups that were part of it. And I can get into more details on the audit information, etc. So quick tour of what can be done within Tested. So the idea here again is that I want to be able to build up the information as I need for the purposes that I need, the fixed asset testing, payroll specific testing, some advanced pricing, a full upgrade, a new chart of accounts that is specific, and be able to winnow out the data to what is important for me when I want to build that environment. By the way, just from a security perspective, this is all a single entry point. Each of these programs is an individual program, and as such can be secured separately. So you can secure somebody so that they're not going in and mucking about with your data source, and that they're not doing data mask setup, data mask runs. So questions so far, Russ? I think what I'll do is I'll just go straight into the data masking then, and then come into wrap up with the presentation.
Yep. Only one other question at the moment. Are there any limits on what you can copy? Can you use it to refresh a whole environment? Sorry, I managed to get a frog in my throat just at the wrong time there. There aren't any limits on what you can copy. If you wanted to use Tested to refresh a whole environment, yes, you can, and that's what it's designed to do in the sense of creating a cut down test environment. If you wanted to refresh everything, so make PY equal to PD, then it will be a lot more efficient to do it the traditional way, because you're doing things at the database level and you're picking up objects. But if you're doing specific and subsets of refreshes like we're talking about here, then that's where Tested comes into its own, because you can then do things down to the actual data level within the tables. Plus, if you did want to refresh a whole environment, you've got that definition level data selection that then allows you to say, for all the other tables, just bring everything that's greater than this year, 1st of January this year, for example.
Yeah, what's really nice, and it's a bit of a getting your mind around it. To your point, Russ, if you just want to do a shifted lift for an entire environment, you're probably not wanting to do this, use this tool. The whole idea is getting away from that. and being able to be more surgical with it. So, yeah. Alrighty. So data mask groups. Couple of key points in data mask. Data mask works directly with the data. So there is the concept of masking at rest. So you're not actually masking the data. It's the data as it's presented on screens is masked. That's not what we are doing here. So the intention of data mask is categorically not to work with production data because you don't want to gibble your production data. This works in particular quite nicely hand in glove with test it, because test it can call a data mask as part of its run, the definition runs. So the idea here is you have personally identifiable information or other data that is sensitive in nature that you want to scramble directly within the tables. So other thing that you would not typically do this for is something like a social insurance number or a tax ID, because that is in essence a link to a lot of other tables, and you don't want to scramble it and then have to find a way to get linked to the others. But addresses, bank accounts, that sort of stuff. So I'm going to call up one that's got a number of them and just point out some of the flexibility. So my demo one, I'm saying I want to go to my address book, my FO101. I want to randomize the alpha name. There's a couple of very specific user date and value fields that I'm using. I also want to go into my FO111, find the name field, and in my addresses, I want to go to my addresses and randomize them. So my masking, I've got three different ways that I can do that. I can clear it with a 1. I can set it to a specific value with a 2, or I can randomize it by putting a 3. So if we look at what I've got set up here in my demo, for my addresses, I've got it to clear. So it's just going to blank them out. Conversely, for my alpha name, I've set it to a 3, which is going to randomize it. And for my other ones, I'm going to set a specific value for it. You obviously need to know what the purpose of the field is before you select what you want to do and that it's going to be acceptable. But so when it says randomize, it's not just getting a bucket of alphabet blocks and chucking them into the field. If there's a consonant, it'll replace with a consonant, a vowel with a vowel, a capital with a capital, a number with a number. But then it's going to randomize within that. So you would end up with some odd-looking names, but they would be scrambled. They would not be personally identifiable. So any points you wanted to make on the masking us for the actual setup for it as well, or?
No, I think that's it. It's pretty straightforward in the way that you set it up. You've got the dynamic data mask there that you can run instantly as well. If you figure out, oh, this particular table, this column, there's some data in there that shouldn't be happening, then you can just run it directly from within that application there. What you have to do is choose the drop-down box at the top to say this is the data source I want to affect, and then just take the row exit to run. Now, with the data sources that are listed there, they have to be registered so that you don't inadvertently mask production. So it's a conscious decision. You register those data sources there before you actually do it. So, yeah, that's it. It's pretty straightforward. One point just on the last two bits, the test it and the data mask, where you've seen tables and data sources and columns. It's all point and click, exactly the same as JD Edwards, and it's because test it is built in the tool set just like Purge is as well. It makes it a whole lot easier to actually configure these kind of things because you're just selecting from information that we're getting directly from OMW or central objects to give you that kind of information and functionality.
Cool. Okay. So I'm just going to switch back over and get into the, because we're a couple of minutes over. I'm obviously talking a bit too much today, but we will switch over and get into the home stretch here. So
it's so difficult when there's so much that you want to talk about and say, and you have to try and fit it within an hour.
Yeah. So I'm just going to show my screen again. So data mask, you're using it to handle data privacy legislation, company policy. We've definitely seen cases where it's for third-party contractors coming in and you just want, you don't want employee address information showing up, for example, for third-party contractors in there. Addresses, possibly salaries, possibly bank account numbers. Information at rest that is not going to affect calculations is typically the sort of stuff that you would want to use this for. So that might put some limitations on it. So any table, any column, you got your three options: clear, set to a value, set to a random value. As Russ mentioned, you can run it standalone. We can also run it within the data refresh just by attaching the data mask choice to it. And as Russ showed as well, we can also run it dynamically. So we've done the demo. So summary, manage it, we believe, gives you better management or ability to manage your system resources, advanced warning of possible issues, and notifications of when it's time to purge and archive. And just in general, hey, things are getting out of hand. It's surprising how often people don't realize that. Test it should allow you to reduce the size, cost, and time for copying data, increase the frequency, control, and quality, and you can have this configured and run by BAs. Make no mistake about it, there is, as we've seen working with clients, there is some thought and some setup initially to set this up to do the right job for you. But once you've got it there and you understand, it should greatly simplify things. And if part of what's holding you back on improving your business is the ability to test out new things, the ability to test out new things is a function of having the resources and the ability and the environment to do it in, this should help out. So data mask, protection of personal data, really big these days, risk of litigation. Oh yeah, integrates with tested. Litigation, not a day goes by without somebody being charged regarding breach of confidential information. So pricing, because a lot of people are always interested in this. So this is a subscription product. So right now, I think pretty much everybody on the session is in the US or US and Canada, $4,000 a year for everything that you saw. As Russ and I have joked a few times, we've considered making this a bit more complicated, but we decided against it. Just, you know, why bother? On top of this is the installation and training. And this is by instance. So an instance is how many deployment servers you have typically. If you're running a company in 9.1, another in 9.2, you're going to have a couple of instances. So this would be per instance. So limited time offer, the installation and configuration for the next three customers, which is about a $780 or $4-hour option, is going to be no charge. We'll also, any new modules for the next 3 years that we add in will be no charge. We expect that there will likely be a slight uplift in the pricing as we add more in, and this is just giving the option to protect it. We do ask that you decide by the end of August. So pretty soon we realize, we know you can do it. Any other questions from people, Russ? I wonder if anybody's out there saying, how soon can I get this?
Yeah, I think so. No, actually, I think you must have answered all of their points, Mike, because there are no other questions coming.
Excellent. Well, you answered the questions, but just a subtle reminder, our team wanted to make sure that you're aware that Team Kane and ISP3, our parent company, will be at In Focus this year. We do have 3, not 1, not 2, but count them 3 customers doing a joint presentation on BI Publisher, migrations and extensions and success. So that should be a very interesting one. That's on Thursday, August 22nd at 11:15. I know, sadly, I'm not going to be able to, for personal reasons, be down there this year, but I'm sure the team will have a blast at it. So any other next steps, detailed discussions, questions and answers, what's involved in getting going, let me know. I'll probably reach out to each of you and I will reach out to each of you to say, hey, what do you think? Is there some potential, or are there any questions, any roadblocks? And we'll see. And whenever the questions get a little over my head, I put the bat signal up for my friend Russ, and we go from there. So I think that's it. Any last questions or anything else?
No,
Mr. Russ?
No, I think the questions are all exhausted. But I'd just like to say thanks very much for everyone coming along and having a look at the product as well. And well done, Mike, on presenting it.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. I guess we're done. So thanks, everybody, for your time. Look forward to chatting and following up with you. And we hope this has been helpful and informative for you. Cheers, everybody, and thanks, Russ.